Strait of Hormuz, 28 kilometers from the Iranian coastline, 2:30 in the morning. 4 Iranian IRGC Navy Hendijan-class patrol vessels and 2 converted fishing dhows were moving in a tight column through the international shipping lane, each vessel loaded with 8 to 12 bottom-influence naval mines and crewed by Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval commandos. Their mission was to seed a 14-kilometer stretch of the strait, with 60 mines capable of disabling or sinking any vessel transiting the world's most critical oil choke point. The operation had been planned for 6 weeks. At full deployment, the minefield would close the Strait of Hormuz within hours, in triggering an energy crisis that would send oil prices above $200 per barrel and force U.S. Central Command into an impossible choice between clearing the lanes under fire or accepting Iranian leverage over global energy markets. What the IRGC naval commanders didn't know was that 18 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6 had been inserted by MH-60S Seahawk helicopters into the water 3 hours earlier, positioned directly along the mine-laying route. The SEALs were not there to observe. They were there to stop it. For 4 weeks, National Reconnaissance Office satellites had tracked unusual activity at Bandar Abbas and the smaller IRGC naval facility at Keshem Island. Long focal length imagery showed Hendijan-class patrol boats being fitted with external cradle racks capable of carrying Mayam bottom influence mines and a weapon designed to activate under the magnetic and acoustic pressure signature of large steel-hulled vessels passing overhead. Signal intelligence intercepts processed by NSA analysts at Fort Meade captured encrypted IRGC communications referencing an operation with a 96-hour execution window. The intelligence picture was unambiguous. Iran was planning to mine the Strait of Hormuz, betting that the international legal and military complexity of clearing a live minefield under potential Iranian fire would paralyze American response long enough to extract political concessions from Washington and Riyadh. Iranian strategic planners had studied the 1988 Operation Praying Mantis and convinced themselves that America's reluctance to escalate into open war represented a permanent exploitable weakness. They believed the mining operation, it conducted under total darkness with plausible deniability, could be completed and denied before American forces could respond with sufficient evidence to justify a military counter. They were wrong on 2 counts. American planners had anticipated the operation 72 hours in advance, and they had no interest in waiting for a single mine to reach the seafloor. Naval Special Warfare Command activated a direct action package within 6 hours of the intelligence assessment reaching 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain. Rather than preempt the operation with airstrikes that would destroy evidence and generate international condemnation, planners chose a surgical intercept. Stop the vessels before deployment, capture personnel and documents, and neutralize the mine-laying capability with minimum escalation. The SEAL Team 6's Gold Squadron was already forward deployed aboard USS Cole, operating in the Gulf of Oman. The 18-man element rehearsed intercept procedures for 48 hours, using GPS-tracked mock-up vessels in restricted waters off Bahrain. Each 3-man SEAL boat crew carried Heckler & Koch MP7 submachine guns fitted with suppressors, Glock 19 sidearms, and M67 fragmentation grenades. 2 of the 6 patrol crews carried underwater demolition charges configured for hull placement against steel-bottomed vessels. The strike package was augmented by 2 MH-60S Seahawk helicopters from Helicopter Sea Combat Squadron 28, each equipped with M134 minigun systems on their port door mounts, and 2 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters from USS Bataan loitering at 8,000 feet with targeting pods locked onto the predicted intercept corridor. Yet the rules of engagement were explicit. Intercept the mine-laying vessels, issue warnings in Farsi and English, and if any vessel continued its mine deployment or engaged American forces, destroy it before a single weapon reached the seafloor. At 02:18 hours, USS Nietzsche, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer screening the eastern approach to the strait, detected 6 surface contacts bearing 285 degrees, moving in a 500-meter column at 9 knots. The contacts matched the predicted movement pattern of the Iranian mine-laying group to within 4 nautical miles of the projected route. NITSA's Combat Information Center immediately relayed contact data to the SEAL insertion helicopters orbiting 40 kilometers to the east. MH-60S crews cross-referenced the radar plot against NRO imagery captured 14 hours earlier, confirming the vessel hull profiles matched the Hendijan-class boats photographed at Keshim Island. 5th Fleet Command authorized the intercept. The SEAL boat crews, already on the water since 0200 hours running without lights on modified RHIBs, received encrypted UHF burst transmissions through waterproof Motorola radios and adjusted their intercept positions. The Iranian column was 3.2 kilometers away and closing at a steady 9 knots. At 0231, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, commanding the SEAL element from the lead RHIB positioned 800 meters off the Iranian column's port beam, transmitted warnings in Farsi and English on the International Maritime Distress Frequency and the known IRGC Naval Operational Channel. The message was direct. All vessels were ordered to stop engines immediately, heave to, and prepare to be boarded for inspection. There was no response. The Iranian column maintained speed and heading. Through night vision optics, SEAL crew members could clearly see IRGC commandos on the stern deck of the lead Hendijan boat working the mine cradle racks, tilting the steel frames toward launch angle. At 0234, the lead Iranian vessel slowed slightly. For 4 seconds, Webb thought the warnings had worked. Then the first mine rack locked into deployment position. Webb gave the order. The 2 MH-60S Seahawks dropped from 2,000 feet to 150 feet in a steep diving approach, running lights dark. The M134 miniguns on their port door mounts spun up to speed. Each M134 delivers 3,000 rounds per minute of 7.62 millimeter fire in a sustained burst that sounds less like gunfire and more like a single continuous mechanical tearing. The lead helicopter's gunner walked a 2-second burst across the stern of the lead Hendijan vessel, shredding the mine cradle rack from its deck mounts before a single weapon could deploy. The impact detonated 2 MIAM mines still secured in the rack through sympathetic explosion, lifting the vessel's entire stern section 3 meters before the hull cracked at the keel and the boat began to flood. The lead Hendijan-class patrol vessel sank in 90 seconds. The second helicopter engaged the 2 converted dhows simultaneously, targeting waterline sections on both vessels. The modified fishing boats, each carrying 8 MIAM mines in their cargo holds, had 0 armor protection. The 7.62 millimeter fire punched through their wooden hulls, flooding the engine compartments and igniting the fuel tanks stored in the aft sections. Yet both dhows began burning immediately. Crewmen dove into the water as the vessels listed hard to starboard, the mines still secured in their flooding cargo holds beginning their descent to the 80-meter bottom. The 3 surviving Hendijan-class boats did not stop. They accelerated to 22 knots and scattered from the column formation. One broke north, turning directly toward USS NITSA's position 18 kilometers away. Webb called for Viper engagement. The AH-1Z attack helicopter rolled out of its holding orbit at 8,000 feet and dove toward the northbound Iranian vessel, triggering a 40-round burst from its M197 3-barrel 20mm cannon. The rounds walked up the boat's wake before walking through its superstructure, destroying the engine housing and shearing off the vessel's communications mast. The Hendijan decelerated immediately. Power lost and began drifting. The 2 remaining Iranian patrol boats reversed course at full throttle, accelerating back toward Iranian territorial waters with their full mine loads still aboard. Both AH-1Z Vipers shadowed them to the 12 nautical mile boundary, confirming they crossed back into Iranian waters without deploying any ordnance. By 0302, the engagement was over. SEAL boat crews moved through the debris fields in the darkness, recovering IRGC sailors from the water using rescue throw bags and boarding ladders. 22 Iranian sailors were pulled from the Gulf, the majority wearing life jackets, most in shock. 3 suffered shrapnel wounds from the sympathetic mine detonation on the lead vessel. SEAL medics administered combat casualty care immediately, now applying pressure dressings and establishing intravenous lines for the most critically wounded before the extraction helicopters arrived. The most significant recovery came from a waterproof document case found attached to the uniform of a senior petty officer pulled from the water near the wreckage of the lead Hendigen. Inside were the complete operational orders for the mine-laying mission, including GPS coordinates for all 60 planned mine positions across the shipping lane, a coded authentication message originating from IRGC Naval Headquarters, and a signed operational order bearing the seal of a senior IRGC flag officer. The intelligence package was the first direct documentary evidence linking a named Iranian commander to a deliberate Strait of Hormuz mining operation. MH-60S helicopters from USS Bataan arrived at 0320 to extract prisoners and transport the most seriously wounded to the ship's medical facilities. Explosive ordnance disposal teams from USS Nietzsche conducted render-safe procedures on 2 Miami mines that had broken free from the sinking dhows and were drifting at 4 meters depth. Nietzsche's RHIB crews recovered both weapons before they could enter the main shipping channel. By 0430, the Strait of Hormuz was clear. The final accounting was stark. 2 IRGC mine-laying dhows destroyed and sunk. 1 Hendigen-class patrol vessel destroyed and sunk. 1 Hendigen-class vessel disabled and drifting, subsequently boarded and searched. 2 Hendigen-class vessels damaged and forced to retreat into Iranian territorial waters with their full mine loads. Of the 48 Iranian sailors who had departed Keshem Island, 22 were captured, 9 were killed, and 17 returned to Iranian waters aboard the 2 retreating vessels. Not a single American was injured. The SEAL element and supporting aircraft had expended 1,400 rounds of 7.62mm minigun fire, 40 rounds of 20mm cannon ammunition, and 6 underwater demolition charges. Total munitions cost approximately $43,000. The Miami mines the operation aimed to deploy had cost Iran an estimated $2.6 million in procurement and 6 weeks of preparation and rehearsal. The engagement lasted 31 minutes from first warning transmission to final prisoner recovery. The strategic consequences of the failed operation were immediate and far-reaching. Within 72 hours, the NSA signal intercepts showed IRGC Naval Command standing down 2 additional mine-laying packages that had been pre-positioned at Bandar Abbas for a follow-on operation. The captured operational documents provided U.S. and Allied naval intelligence with a complete picture of IRGC minefield deployment doctrine, including mine spacing calculations, trigger threshold settings, and the specific shipping lane coordinates Iranian planners considered highest value targets for disruption. Iranian commanders had structured the entire operation around the assumption that plausible deniability would shield them from direct military response. Without witnesses and with no physical evidence, they believed American forces would be unable to justify a counterstrike that might escalate into open conflict. Instead, they handed American forces both physical evidence and live witnesses in a single 31-minute engagement. The 2 Hendigen vessels that returned to port arrived carrying mines they would never be able to deploy again without certainty of interception. For the IRGC, the operation had been designed as the opening move of a sustained pressure campaign intended to demonstrate that Iran could hold global energy supplies at risk without triggering a proportional military response. Instead, it demonstrated that 18 Navy SEALs operating from small boats in total darkness could dismantle a 6-week operation before a single weapon reached its target. Without sustaining a single casualty, the Strait of Hormuz remained open. The oil kept flowing, and somewhere in Tehran, a senior IRGC admiral's signed operational order was sitting on a desk in Bahrain, being read by analysts who would spend the next several months mapping every asset, every base, and every officer connected to the command structure that had authorized it. Sometimes the operation you design to create leverage becomes the one that destroys it.